out what's happening.
Let's go.
We are talking the new movie You Should Have Left. This one stars Kevin Bacon and Amanda Seyfried and is directed by David Keop. David Keop actually directed Kevin Bacon in another horror movie, Stir of Echoes, some years ago. So this is kind of a haunted house movie in a lot of ways. So it focuses on Kevin Bacon's character Theo, who is a high-profile banker, and he was previously accused of murdering his wife in the bathtub. But he went to trial and kind of obviously was found innocent. But it's haunted him ever since, and he has got this kind of reputation. A lot of people thought he was actually guilty. Now he has a new wife, played by Amanda Seyfried, who is an aspiring actress, and a young daughter. Now the three of them go to Wales for a kind of vacation before Amanda Seyfried's character, who's actually playing an actress in the movie, is going on shoot to make a new film. So they get this kind of remote, strangely designed house in Wales, and things are not as they seem. This house seems to have certain phenomena that will go on, and it will be end up in a kind of abstract style haunted house movie in a way. That's all I'll say about the plot here. First of all, let's talk about what works. So this is a fairly sort of high-profile movie, considering this is now coming out during lockdown, when there's not much sort of new media hitting the kind of the airwaves, so to speak. So this has actually probably got a lot more press than maybe it would have had there not been the coronavirus. But nonetheless, it's a very well-made film, certainly. I think there's two main strengths this movie has, and that is in its performances and in its kind of directorial style here. Now, we'll talk about the performances first. Now, I think that our three principal characters here, Kevin Bacon, Amanda Seyfried, obviously veteran actors at this point, and I think they do a great job. I really like the dynamic, and there's kind of like a running gag that maybe gets a little bit old, obviously, that Kevin Bacon is so much older than Amanda Seyfried. But that does kind of play into maybe the story to a point. But I actually sort of still quite like their kind of relationship. I thought they both played their characters extremely well. I mean, Kevin Bacon, I think, is one of the most expressive actors of today, to be honest with you. And I think he does a great job here. But also mentioned the young girl who plays their daughter, who I think also does a fantastic job. And this movie really is part of the strength of it is these three actors doing a really good job. And I've got to say, I thought their characters were written to be, believable characters and seem like kind of real people who have a real relationship. So that was all good. The other thing I will mention as well is the kind of the directorial style in the actual house itself. So the house itself is actually a character. And without giving anything away, we have seen houses almost become a character themselves in other horror movies. But yeah, suffice it to say, this works well with that. They do a great job with light and shadow here. Really good sort of camera angles. I mean, the whole point of the house that it is something bizarre is going on, and it seems to have somewhat of a life of its own, with time seemingly kind of disappearing, and rooms appearing and disappearing, and the layout kind of changing. We've seen it before, like I've mentioned, in things like Grave Encounters, where the house almost, or the building, kind of seems alive and just seems to go on forever and things, and you can't escape, and has all these kind of like part-time kind of paradoxes and stuff like that. But it's a character upon itself, and it's a real house in Wales, apparently, and it's a bizarre looking house, and I think it's, although it's very modern, it's not like some old Gothic house. So those two, there's some two strong points here, and the movie itself is the actual plot of it is somewhat average. I'll be honest with them, we're going to go into the negatives here. It's an interesting plot, but I don't think it's particularly original. I think the movie thinks it's somewhat original, but without giving anything away, we've all seen this kind of setup before, and I think you can pretty much, the movie doesn't do a good enough job of having a surprise about what happens. I mean, it has a kind of a twist, but I don't think it will surprise anyone about what actually happens. Now, the actual, the way, outside of the kind of, like I said, the camera angles, the lighting, that's not on a technical level, I think it's very good. But the movie really does rely on tried and tested horror cliches. You know, jump scares, we'll have a character facing the camera and something will kind of walk behind them and things like that. Lots of things you've kind of seen before. And I have to say, I think the third act is a little confusing. Now, I would say it's deliberately trying to be confusing because the whole point of this house is it kind of is almost alive and is kind of driving you mad, and it kind of has this kind of like this strange kind of effect and things like that. So it deliberately is trying to be confusing and disorientating. But I feel maybe the narrative is actually quite simple, but it almost gets lost in the kind of the shuffle to a certain degree. So I actually think this movie has some really strong elements, but the actual story itself is very, very basic, to be quite honest. And it seems like it's going to be complicated. It seems like there's a lot going on, but there isn't, really. And as I said, it does rely a little bit on the tried and tested horror tropes, the tried and tested camera tricks. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I gotta be honest with you, I actually really enjoyed the performances, and I was so impressed with some of the cinematography here. I will say it surpasses somewhat of an average mark for me because of that, but I don't feel the actual meat on the bones is particularly original or all that interesting, and I think some people may actually find this a little dull. It very much plays as a sort of psychological haunted house sort of style movie. Is the best way to describe it. More emphasis on the psychological rather than the haunting. But I will give it a 6 out of 10 because I do feel that it does have some very good strengths, and I was interested in the characters. And to me, as I've said in many reviews, if you can get good characters, good believable characters, you're halfway there. So although I do feel this movie is ultimately somewhat average, it's elevated by those performances. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.